Hey everybody, good to see you back once again. I don't have much of an intro for you other than we've got a lot of parts and pieces all over the place that need to be put back onto the tractor. So the goal of this episode is to get a lot of that prior paint batch assembled there so that we can start working on and fitting the pieces right here. One quick bit of housekeeping from the prior episode where I did the re-grounding light mod. A lot of suggestions about using electrical contact grease on, like the bulb socket and the button on the power wire, things like that. Also, taking some additional rust proofing measures to the extra hole that I drilled in each housing. One thing you did not see on that episode is, well, the fact that YouTube creates a situation where you end up doing a lot of the work twice because, well, I had the perfect opportunity to throw that episode together showing how I mod those lights, but that wasn't the end of it. Right after I finished with the episode, because I had to have a fully assembled light at the end of it, I completely disassembled both of them again because I still needed to scuff the housings and the rings that went around the lenses and get those resprayed in the same paint that the rest of the tractor is wearing to ensure a good color match. So that's just another instance where the YouTube process kind of made it twice the amount of work that it probably should have been, but that wasn't necessary to include there. So when we do the final assembly on those, I always do put the electrical contact grease on things like that. And we've got another additional coat of paint on everything that had holes drilled in them anyway. So we're counting the rust proofing as being done. Now that that's out of the way, let's get started. Today we start with the governor. I've got the gasket stuck in place on the front of it, and it just meshes with the gear beneath the front cover. There we are. Now the top two bolts, I do put sealer on the threads because those are open holes into the governor housing, and that receives oil splash from the gear train behind the front cover. So I've had slight oil seepage past the heads of these bolts in the past if I have not put sealer on the threads. The bottom hole down here is a blind hole into the front cover, so that one can go in dry. And then of course this crankcase jumper tube has a gasket that goes under it that's stuck to it right now. And anyone that's ever done these before, we gotta get lined into this fitting that's on the front of the head over here. Anyone that's ever done one of these before will know it can sometimes come into conflict with the position of your radiator hose clamps there beneath the thermostat housing. So sometimes there is a bit of fitting to be done. And one more piece that we can put in place for the governor system. It's been in paint for about 3 weeks because it was convenient to clean and spray. So the top pivot with the linkage rod, and it goes beneath those two cylinder head nuts there. So we had to peel those two off, but bracket just sits on those, and then we go down and attach it to the lever that's on the governor. And of course we pin it at the bottom, and then we step on the hood and make a whole bunch of noise. And of course we pin it at the bottom and then return the cylinder head nuts to the 70 foot-pounds of torque. I still like to creep up on it. All right, let's begin to work on mounting the radiator now. First order of business is to get the fan shroud set in place. We have 2 new rubber isolating pads that can go in position on the bolster. And now we just carefully slide it in. The first thing I'm going to do here is corral the fan shroud so it's not bouncing around. Makes me nervous when something can hit the front cover and hit the fan and hit the thermostat housing and hit the radiator core and feel much better once I get it caged in a little bit. Alright everybody, I'm not sure how we're going to get through this, but the stud's on the bottom of the radiator. I'm only showing you on this side because the other side's got that drain pipe in the way and it's even more impossible. So we need to put a flat washer on the stud and then a spring and then this nylock nut. That's what holds the radiator in, just the friction of that spring fit. Okay, washer and spring. Okay, there's the nut. So we'll tighten that in. We don't need to fully compress the spring and coil bind it. We want there to be a little bit of slack there. So we'll just go until the nylock top portion of the nut starts to engage the threads of the stud. And that's all we need to do down here. Up top now, steering side of things, it's time for the worm shaft. And if I had to pick one Farmall design that I just don't care for, it's this one. The way they ran the shaft through the radiator top tank. I, well, have my reservations about it. I always have, but it obviously worked. And they did it for years and years across many different models. At the top end of it here, we've got to load the bearing guide that we bored out and rebushed, as well as, let's get our orientation correct here, yep, the gauge panel. And because we have the quadrant gear loaded on top of the pedestal shaft, we need to thread the worm shaft on in because it is engaging with it right now. There we are. And we lock it down with the large plug on the front. Back of the radiator once again. I know we've got a lot of pieces that go in this area. This cross brace can go on. This is another piece that's been painted for, oh, a good couple of weeks now anyway. And building off of the cross brace, we've got this brace rod that goes between the bracket back there and the cross brace that we just put on. Bolt with a nut and a washer drop down from the front. The back has a couple of 7/16 fine thread nuts that will end up jamming to both sides of the brace here. Once we know where our radiator position has to be, you can see up here, we can still move this radiator a bit. That's because of the spring mounting on the bottom, and we won't know where this radiator needs to end up until we have fit the grill and the hood and the fuel tank. So for now, our radiator connections are going to stay out because they're easily put in after, and this whole brace rod here is going to stay loose as well until we know where everything is going to want to live. Next up, I want to take a minute to talk about the gauges. I purchased a new oil pressure gauge for the project as well as a new temperature gauge. I sourced them from Evergreen Restoration. I'm not trying to stump for them, but they're very high quality gauges. That is their contact info right there if you want to pause it. And if you need a gauge for something, they make it. All right, complete breakdown in there. They are not manufacturer specific. And they've got real glass polished stainless steel bezels and are calibrated. They also recover steering wheels as well, so very highly recommended. One thing that was interesting to see, the oil gauge comes with the adapter fitting on the back to retain the original IH small diameter feed line. Now, I go to 1/4 inch double flare brake line on all of my fittings anyhow, so I don't need this for this application, but that is a very handy piece to have with your gauge if that's what your feed line is going to be. So we can fit the new temperature gauge right now. And as long as we are in the neighborhood, we might as well fit the oil pressure gauge as well. And we might as well fab up the new oil line, so we have to dive in about 2 inches here to get closer to the block. So let's make our first bend about right there, and we'll just eyeball the rest. Let's check the fit. Hit it with a crow's foot down here real quick. Slight tweak. And I think we've got it. Spiral up at the top to absorb the vibration. Good standoff all the way down to the bottom. And it still affords plenty of room to take that valve cover off. I can't fully join it to the back of the pressure gauge today because I don't have the double-ended 1/8 inch pipe thread union to attach the double flare fitting to the back of the gauge itself. That's all right. We'll go to town tomorrow, find one of those. So any difference in the offset or the standoff beyond what I've estimated here is going to be something we can cope with because the line is still very malleable. We can tweak as needed on this other end. We'll take it back off though now. We still have to prep it for paint, but that's another small task. It's nice to have checked off the list. We aren't out of painted parts yet. We can finish up with the belly pump connections now. This can be kind of a tricky one to start, working blind in there. We got it. This one I'm going to go at a 45-degree angle down and forward. That would be the best potential angle to run a hose off of here, considering the belt pulley is so close, as is the control lever, which is up next. I like to start the bolt first a little bit, all right? And then we find where the lever wants to engage. There, we got it. The two short takeouts on this side now, I'm going to point up and to the rear at about a 45, because we'll have the battery box right here. Can't go straight down because the clutch rod's in the way. You could point one straight forward and one straight back. That's kind of the best access is going to be back like that. And the last set of washers, these are the ones that I bet were probably always thrown away first, because how many farmers had the patience to replace all these parts every time they checked the oil? Looks good. And a minute ago I mentioned the battery box, so we might as well put the base brackets on, if anything else, just to get them out of our way. Wow, this one's being stuck. Come on. There we go. And next, the top plate. The two holes out here will remain open for now, because when the battery box sets onto the brackets, there are two bolts, square-headed bolts, that go from the inside of the box down through those two holes, and they connect the top plate to the side plate. So we'll just let that be for now, because I don't trust that the paint on the new battery box is dry enough to be placed on here yet and not want to stick. So we'll give that battery box a few more days to set up before it goes on. All right, let's just keep on going with the assembly. We've got the air cleaner we can put on. There's the band and the oil cup. I think we've got some bolts. Yep, nuts, bolts, washers right here. Let's keep taking red parts off the bench and putting them on the tractor. Let's give it some oil. Glug, glug, glug. Approaching the line. We'll stop right there. And as long as we're this far, I might as well put the mud guard on, at the very least, to save me from stepping on it. Okay, everybody, last piece of the day. Not so much because we need it, but because we can, and we can get it off the bench. We've made an episode already out of just bolting red pieces onto a red tractor, so why stop now, right? Distributor drive going in place. And sealer on the threads of the bottom inside bolt, because that is the only one that's not a blind hole. Well, everybody, we worked our way through a lot of detail items today, a lot of small parts, pieces, gauges in place, made the line, air cleaner on, radiator adjusted, pass through of that steering shaft is very good. Not going to hit anything. And you know, these things build up awfully slow, but it's starting to look more and more like a finished H all the time. So there's at least a light at the end of the tunnel. It'll be nice once I finally get those steering rods off the clothesline. First, we need to fit all of those pieces down there. Fuel tank's going to be the biggie. Then we can finally finalize that tree and get the steering and throttle and all that other stuff in place for good. But I thought we were going to get as far as starting in on the grill today, but I didn't set out to make another just pure assembly episode, but it turned out we had that many pieces to do. So that's how it played out. Thank you for watching, everyone. Hope you all tune in again. We'll keep busy here. Side note, it's a little bit frustrating, but expected. I was hoping to get the Farmall H down to the Now Then show for the IH feature this year, and I've officially called it. It is not going to happen. I am not as far along as I needed to be by this point, and it's time to jump off of this project for the next week or so, because we need to start prepping the Minneapolis Moulines to get down to the Scott Carver Threshers show in Jordan, Minnesota. That's coming up very soon. So progress on the H is going to halt for, I'd say, a week to 10 days anyhow. That's just what it is. So we'll have some show prep for that coming up on the feed here shortly. And yeah, I'll say it again. Thank you for watching, everyone. We'll film our adventures no matter what color they happen to center around, right? Hope to see y'all again.